Hello everyone, this is Hari Priyanka. I'm from Impulse Coaching Institute. So this video is exclusively about reading comprehension from CSAT syllabus. So let's get started. So before we get into the actual core topic reading comprehension, let's understand what comprehension is all about. Comprehension itself means understanding. Basically, the understanding ability is being tested through reading comprehension in CSAT. Yeah. So I've put up a definition over here. Understanding the context and test your language skills. That's the purpose of having comprehension in the syllabus. Comprehending means understanding. That's it. This is very simple concept. So, okay, if they've included reading comprehension in the syllabus, what is the purpose? Okay, what is RC test? Reading comprehension என்ன டெஸ்ட் பண்ணணும்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா reading ability. உனக்கு அந்த reading ability இருந்தால் தான் you'll be able to figure out the answer for the asked question. So, இதுதான் வந்து first test. Second test பார்த்தீங்கன்னா comprehension. Comprehension is again understanding, interpretation, உன்னுடைய ability to understand stuff. அதை தான் செக் பண்ணுங்க. Third is retention or verbal memory. Retention is nothing but holding back. இப்போ நம்ம ஒரு passage படிக்கிறோம், அந்த சென்டென்ஸ் வந்து இந்த பேசேஜ்ல இந்த பேராகிராஃப்ல வந்திருக்குங்கிற ஒரு மெமரி இருந்தா தான் யூ பி ஏபிள் டு லொகேட் தி ஆன்சர் வெரி ஈஸிலி. ஸோ தட் பவர் இஸ் ஆல்சோ செக் ஹியர். அனலிட்டிக்கல் எபிலிட்டி, ஒன்னு அனலைஸ் பண்ணா தான் யூ வில் கன்க்ளூட், யூ வில் இன்ஃபர் சம்திங் ஃப்ரம் இட், யூ வில் have an opinion or decision about it. So and the analytical ability, this ability is very important for any administrator. So this is also checked in RC. Ability to read and think simultaneously. இப்போ ஒரு passage நம்ம படிக்கிறோம் அப்படின்னா you cannot just like it scan it, right? You have to read and also have drawn conclusions or inferences about it in your mind. Back of the mind that should be processing. அதுதான் that simultaneous thinking and reading ability is also checked here. Common sense, that's very important for any activity, and reading comprehension is not an exception. And general awareness. Only when you're aware of stuff around you, be it science or sports or any topic for that matter, you will be very easily concluding the answers. And all these skills are checked through RC. So this is what the purpose of having RC in your syllabus. Okay. How to comprehend. Now that we know what RC deals with, how to comprehend. Or a passage கொடுத்து எப்படி comprehend பண்ணலாம். Anything for that matter, be it a small argument or statement or anything for that matter, first go for the key ideas. There will always be some hints or clues in any given statement or argument or any passage also. So அந்த argumentல இருக்கிற அந்த statementல இருக்கிற keywords first try to detect it. Second, summarize the paragraph. இப்போ for critical analysis or implicit statements பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the statement itself will be very one or two in number. Okay, there you need to summarize it. Whereas in passages, reading comprehension பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it comprises of 2 to 3 paragraphs, sometimes 3 to 5 paragraphs as well, right? So அந்த இடத்துல when there are too many paragraphs, what I would suggest you is ஒரு paragraph படிச்சா one paragraph deals with only one topic that we all know. So on the topic sentence என்னவா இருக்கும், what is this paragraph deals with அப்படிங்கறத one line ல maybe few words ல describe it. Just put it about each paragraph. ஒரு 5 paragraphs இருந்தா ஒவ்வொரு paragraph மேலே one line statement about that paragraph எழுதிட்டீங்கன்னா, so if the question is you will be reading the questions, right? அந்த questionக்கு answer easy locate பண்ணலாம். Instead of again rereading all the paragraphs to find where that point will be, அந்த confusion-ஐயும் அந்த reading time-ஐயும் வந்து நம்ம avoid பண்றதுக்கு this topic sentence that you have created for each paragraph will definitely be of great help. Trust me, you can summarize that paragraph and just that will take few seconds rather than rereading the whole paragraph, right? So be smart and summarize it beforehand. Third is determining the sentence links. So basically ஒரு argument or passages நிறைய sentences இருக்கும், அதனுடைய லிங்க்ஸ் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இட் குட் ஹேவ் அ கான்ட்ரடிக்டரி மீனிங். இப்போ ஒரு ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் சொல்லிட்டு அதனுடைய கான்ட்ரடிக்ஷன் வந்து ஒரு லிங்கர்ல சொல்லியிருப்பாங்க, ஆன் தி கான்ட்ரரி இல்லைனா அதர்வைஸ் அப்படின்னு. ஸோ கோ ஃபார் த லிங்கர்ஸ், ஜஸ்ட் டோன்ட் பிளைண்ட்லி கோ ஃபார் த ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ஸ். ஓகே, சம்டைம்ஸ் சர்க்காசம் எம்ப்ளாய் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க, அந்த இடத்துல வந்து வி cannot டேக் அந்த லிங்கருக்கு அப்புறம் இருக்கிற ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் வில் கிவ் அ டிஃப்ரெண்ட் மீனிங். When you include linker, it will give totally another meaning. So on the mari, don't skip out the linkers, go for the linkers also, so that you clearly get the tone of the author. Fourth, ask questions. If you're doubtful about it, or if you are finding something clumsy over there, ask questions. Ask yourself if you are on the right track. Yeah, so that these are the small things that you can employ to comprehend a paragraph easily, very in a very fast manner. Yeah. Okay. Now that we know about a brief introduction about reading comprehension, let's get into the reading part, which is the most crucial part. So, how to read a paragraph? That is a strategy as well. Not everybody reads the same paragraph alike. Everybody has their own speed, has their own tendency to understand. Let's get into the smallest techniques that you can use in order to gain some time, in order to crack all the questions. Yeah. So first thing, understanding content. I think you should be having some language skills in order to understand the content. That is the first expectation out of it. Yeah. You should be aware of the language. I mean, you should have a basic language skills. That's all. Here, the subject of the passage can be diverse. So if you see reading comprehension, one passage will be from science, one passage will be from sports, one passage again from current affairs, politics, anything. The topics will be diverse. Whereas you are expected to understand and comprehend accordingly. That's your part. So let's go get on to the definition of how to understand content. The subject of the passage can be diverse, ranging from philosophy to astronomy, from economics to art, or from history to cricket. Yeah, any topic for that matter, you're given a passage. Find the key sentences. Again, as we discussed earlier, key sentences are the only route to gain some time or to avoid rereading sentences. Rereading sentences. So get on to the key sentences initially. Whenever you read and when you know that this is of prime importance, just underline it. That's all it takes. This is how you understand the content in a better way, and you will not be messed up when you read the questions. Reading speed. This is something another important matter to discuss when with regards to reading comprehension, because people again tend to read the same paragraph in a different speed. Some read it very fast, but again they don't understand anything. Again they go for it another time. That is not an effective method, whereas others, again slow readers, take so much time thinking that they have to understand each and every word and then they have to comprehend. That is again of no use. How important the reading speed is. Reading speed is not determined by the number of words you read per minute. It's the number of words you read and understand per minute. That is how effective reading is. So let's see how speed is very important. Speed still remains crucial because of its immediate bearings on the entire RC solving process. Yeah, see, a slow reader might take so much time in reading comprehension and miss out the other easy segments in the question paper. This is again a major disadvantage if you take so much time in reading. So be sure once you read and with focus, with concentration, and you get it registered in your mind, that's all you have to spend for RC. Don't take so much time or don't overthink that you need to understand each and every word. That's not our business there. We're just trying to understand the overall message, and each and every statement should be understood. That's all, not each and every word. Got it? So speed is an excellent weapon to have in one's arsenal. So excellent weapon as in you're getting more time, you're saving more time, and this is how you differentiate yourself from others who have not prepared exclusively for reading comprehension. Yeah, this after all a competitive exam. You need to strategize and you need to be very smart in approaching all the questions. And reading comprehension can be approached in a better way through by following all these principles. Yeah. Okay, what is reading speed? Reading speed is not just the number of words read per minute. Instead, it's actually the number of words read and understood per minute. This is what we discussed, right? Okay. Now that we know reading speed is important, we should also be knowing how to improve the reading speed or tips as such. I have 4 tips. Okay, I put it in 4 different points. Let's see what are the 4 points. One is visual reading. So visual reading. Many of us usually do this, especially in our school exams or college exams. Any question or any passage that's given, we naturally tend to go by word by word, or we'll trace the line with our fingers, we'll trace the line with the pencils. But that's not necessary. as I told you earlier, we are not here to understand each and every word in the comprehension. Instead, we are just looking for the overall meaning of the sentence. That's it. So in that case, I've given you an example of how not to read and how to read. So in this incorrect method and the correct method, I've employed the same sentence, and I've also marked how one should not read. Say for instance, the boy who wrote that article has been appointed as the chairperson of the student committee of the Loyola College of Arts and Science. This is the statement. The incorrect method of reading will be you trace if you trace your finger along the line of, or if you trace your pencil along the line, you tend to take pause after each word. That's what is the natural phenomenon that takes place when you go by fingers or pencils. See, the boy who wrote that article has been appointed. This is not necessary. This is actually spoiling your time. Instead, the boy who wrote that article has been appointed as chairperson of the student committee of the Loyola College of Arts and Science. That's it. So the methodology here I employed is just club a group of words, a bunch of words together gives a better clarity, and that's more important. That saves a lot of time, and that's why it's very important. So here I put up a sentence saying a superior method of reading or visual reading is where a meaningful group of words are read simultaneously as indicated by the slashes. Just club it together, read it, and get the meaning out of it. That's all. Don't waste your time by syllabifying each and every word in the sentence. That's all. This will definitely improve your reading speed. And this method is visual method. Yeah, you just have to scan through your eyes, club through your eyes. Don't have to waste so much time doing anything else. Second, avoid rereading sentences. Again, when you read once with concentration, you need not go for it the second time. And when you summarize and write a topic sentence above each paragraph, again, you can easily locate the answer. So rereading sentences will not occur when you are doing everything with concentration. So let's just read it out. Rereading will not lead to a better understanding of the context. If you think rereading will give a better picture, no, that doesn't serve the purpose at all. More often than not, a lack of concentration is responsible for failing to understand a sentence. So if you go for rereading, then it means you failed to read the first time with concentration. Let's avoid that. Let's be very sure that I'm going to read this passage with concentration and go for it. Yeah. Filtering junk sentences. Junk is nothing but all the redundancy words or terms that's used to lengthen the whole passage without any value. Any lines that are added without any value are called junk sentences, or any examples in order to prove the point is again not necessary for us. We need that point, we need that statement, and not anything that supports that statement. So this comes only out of practice when you are open to a lot of reading, when you are aware that there are so many other different kinds of paragraphs, and when you have practiced reading, then automatically you'll be able to filter the redundant junk sentences, and that again saves a lot of time because you are on track. So that will avoid time wastage. Let's see what is put up here. Sentences in the form of elaborate examples or illustrations or merely reconfirm well-established ideas which add only length to the passage and not any value to the content. Those sentences can be skimmed through to save valuable time. Serious practice helps in identifying the junk sentences. Yeah, when you practice, when you read a lot, obviously you'll be able to avoid junk sentences. And the fourth one is developing a reading habit. This is very easy to say. It could be a very easy advice, but it takes a lot of determination to follow. That is to read constantly, have this habit of reading. It could be anything. Here I've put up a few options based on competitive exams to improve your skills for competitive exams. But apart from all these three, I would say read something that really excites you, that really interests you, and that you have all your heart for. Yeah, only then you will have an inclined interest towards reading. With that interest, you will be able to explore a lot of reading rather than forcefully sitting and reading a newspaper at first. So that is how you can improve all other skills. But to improve reading habit as such, you need to start with something that really excites you. Read a small passage, read an article, and try to understand what is said or what is written, and constantly read. Develop the habit of reading. That's all. Say, for instance, if a passage has around 10 sentences and you're not aware or you don't know the meaning of one or two sentences, it's fine. Try to get the contextual meaning, because every time you cannot go for word by word meaning, and that's not necessary also. Nobody knows everything. Just be very sure that nobody knows everything. We are trying to understand the meaning from the context, and that is called contextual meaning. Try to do that. And if you don't know the majority of the sentences in a paragraph, then take a dictionary with you. Just find the words that are really difficult to understand, jot it down, and try to practice that word in the next week with your friends or with anybody who's preparing for competitive exams with you. Just share the information and make sure you bring that word to usage. That is how you get that word registered in your mind. Just don't write it down and throw it away. That doesn't help you. So make sure that you use the word in the next week. Bring it to usage. Discuss the same with your friends or anybody who would listen to you, and that is how you develop vocabulary as well. And of course, your reading skills are improved when you do this. Yeah. So newspapers like Economic Times, especially that editorial column, the Hindu, all these things are good to start with. I mean, good to improve your knowledge as well and your reading habit. Magazines like Outlook, Reader's Digest in India Today are also very good for all the competitive exams, especially UPSC. Fictional novels, you can go for any kind of novels that interest you. This is how you improve the reading habit, or if you are introduced to reading habit, go by what I said at first. Please start with something that really excites you. Altogether, these are the 4 points that improve your reading speed. You just have to read constantly about something so that you have a hang of it. As simple as that. Now, I have categorized the possible questions that can be asked in reading comprehension. If a passage is given, we'll get around 2 to 3 questions or 3 to 5 questions at times. So, based on the popular categories, I have categorized the questions into 6 types. So, one such type is main theme or central idea. Along with the category, I've given the purpose, the solution, and an example question in order to understand how to approach the question and how to answer that effectively. Yeah. Let's say the first category, main theme or central idea. So the purpose to ask you question on main theme or central idea is to check your understanding ability. Simple, right? If you understand the paragraph, you will be able to conclude the main theme or the central idea of the passage. How do you do it? How do you receive or how do you get to the answer? Solution is a quick read of the first or last or both paras will definitely provide you with an idea about the main theme of the passage. Here, a quick read of the first or last or both paras. So generally, the topical sentence or the theme is explained in the first or the last paragraphs in order to introduce or sum up the paragraph. So it's just a small trick to check if you're right. Just go for the first and the second last paragraph and see if your theme you have chosen after reading the entire passage is there in the paragraph. Definitely will come to the right option. For example, which of the following options best summarizes the passage is nothing but main theme or central idea as a question. Now, you know why the main theme questions are asked, how to approach that question, how to find the answer, and I've given you an example question. So in this format, I've added 5 more categories of questions. Let's see each in detail. Author's point of view. Okay, there are many questions in many paragraphs that asks about author's point of view or author's tone, author's attitude, anything now of authors has been asked. So let's see how to approach those type of questions. The purpose of such questions is to test your ability to judge the author's attitude or his stand on the subject by analyzing the content, style, and phraseology used in the passage. Again, your ability to judge through finding his tone, finding his attitude, and finding the phrases used in the passage. This is the whole purpose of having author's point of view type of questions. Solution is look for sentences that determine the tone of the author. Okay, through what will you get to the tone? It's through adjectives and adverbs that has been used. You get to the actual tone of the passage or actual attitude of the author in the passage. So these are the words that help you find the mood of the whole passage. Okay. Look for sentences that determine the tone of the author. Analyze the kinds of adverbs and adjectives being used by the author to describe something. These words indicate the mood and intensity of his thought. Mood and intensity. So example questions are, what is the author's tone in the second paragraph? Yeah, go for the adjectives, go for the adverbs, go for any word that describes the tone and find the right answer. According to the author, what can be the logical solution to the issue at hand? Again, they're asking the author's opinion here. Yeah, you need to put yourself in author's shoes and you have to decide upon that. C, which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? Again, it's author's view or opinion. So be sure what the question is, be sure how to approach those questions, and always choose the right answer with confidence. That's more important and that leaves you peaceful, basically. Okay, let's get on to the third category, explicit information. The purpose of having this explicit information type of questions is to test your retention skills. So explicit itself means anything that is direct from the passage is explicit. So when they ask you a direct question, you will go for the direct answer. Here they're testing your efficiency in finding out the right answer in the passage. That is your retention, your memory power. To locate the answer, it takes some time, and if you do it very effectively, if you do it very fast, then you have good retention skills, then your explicit information is also right. So this is the purpose of having explicit information type of questions in RC. So remember, the information you have read and stored the same. That's the purpose. Solution is, it could be verified by rereading the specific part of the passage that contains the answer. Now that you have located the answer, you need to reconfirm or revalidate with the question, right? So in that case, you can reread and confirm it. You cannot just like that go for it and say this is the right option, so I'll choose option B. No, that's not the case. You just have to reread it in order to confirm. That's it. So example questions are, which one of the following options is true according to the passage? Yeah, it's kind of true or false. That is, two options will be given and you need to find if that statement is given in the passage or not. That's it. Which one of the following options is not a driving force for young entrepreneurs? Again, two information or three informations. Three information will be given and you need to choose the right one based on what is given in the passage. Option C, why did the author move from the hometown to Paris? Again, a direct answer is expected and you can go and search in the passage. This is explicit type of question. Implied information is nothing but implicit. Implicit is nothing but anything indirect from the passage is implicit. So the purpose of having implied information is to test your ability to interpret and understand the arguments put forth by the author. The correctness of your analysis of the passage. Again, your analytical ability, your concluding ability, all that is tested because you need to understand the message and you have to answer accordingly. So that's the purpose. As usual, this is one of the purpose for any comprehension. Solution is to understand the overall idea of the passage. That's the basic, comprehension is to understand the passage and answer accordingly, and that is expected from these type of questions also. Example, as per the passage, which of the following options can be inferred? Yeah, inferred itself refers to what do you understand or what do you interpret from the passage. That's pretty much clear. Option B, with which of the following arguments is the author most likely to agree? Again, you need to conclude this statement by understanding the whole passage and find the right opinion or find the right option that best describes the passage. Yeah. According to the passage, what could have been the reason behind the actions of the dictator? Again, something that you need to understand and explain through the best option. Yeah. Word or phrase in context. Purpose. Okay, now these type of questions will definitely check your language efficiency, and this again can be taken from the context. A part of it, you can at least associate the meaning with that of the context. But to be very sure, you need to have that vocabulary skill. But still, let's try it out. Yeah, not necessarily. It will definitely be an unknown topic or unknown phrase. It could be a phrase that's familiar to us. Sometimes not so familiar phrase can be asked. In that case, try to grab the meaning from the context. Yeah, the purpose is to test your understanding of the language usage and the subject matter of the passage, to test your reasoning skills and ability to relate to author's ideas. Solution: a thorough second reading of the part of the passage from where the phrase has been picked up. Now that they've given a word or a phrase and they're asking the meaning of it, what will you do? You just have to go back to the context where that phrase or word has been put up and just try to get the overall meaning of it through the context and see which is the best option, which is synonymous to what you've found. Yeah. Example questions are: why does the author use the words stiff upper lip to describe Jawaharlal Nehru? So in this case, again, you will be going to the passage or paragraph that that has this word stiff upper lip and try to find a reason from there. Yeah, there's more than enough. Option B: in the context of the passage, the phrase "as good as it gets" means same thing. The same methodology will be employed here. Let's get on to the last question category: passage structure or technique. Yeah. The purpose of this type is to test your ability to analyze the structure of the passage and identify sentences and paragraphs as hypotheses, solutions, conclusions, assumptions, premises, or arguments. Yeah. So basically, all these kinds are tested. You need to identify the passage as to which direction or which format it is actually in. Okay. Solution: practice reading analytical passages from different magazines to improve the ability to determine one argument from another. You need to know how to segregate. You need to know what is hypothesis. You need to know what is a solution. You need to know what a conclusion is. All these things you should be aware of. All the format. You should know how a conclusion looks like. You should know what an assumption looks like. Only when you're clear with these terminologies, you'll be able to segregate or you'll be able to answer the questions directly. So for example, which of these options best represents the structure of the passage? Or what is the assumption made by the author when he says democracy will never fail? So these are the possible arguments that will be given in these are the possible points that will be put up in the passage, and you need to conclude or you need to arrive at the right answer by just checking the para format. Okay. So this is passage structure or technique. Okay. Now we have seen what RC is, how to approach RC or how to comprehend reading comprehension, and then comes how to improve your reading skills. We saw 4 types of techniques to improve your reading skills, and then we started with our question categories. What different types of questions are mostly mostly seen in reading comprehensions in CSAT papers. Now, most importantly, strategies to eliminate options. I think this strategy will definitely save you plenty of time when you can eliminate the wrong options, and when you're left with few possible options, you can easily choose the right one. So let's see what are all the key strategies to eliminate those options. Okay, first one is verbosity. Verbosity means too many decorations, I would say. Something lengthy in order to make us feel that this could be right. Too many use of language unnecessarily. That is verbosity. Very too gaudy. That's the meaning. Let's look at the definition. Verbose options, which can be recognized by their extra length, are a direct indicator of this type of trap, are to be avoided or eliminated. The correct option gives the complete picture in the most precise manner. ரொம்ப பேசிட்டு இருந்தாங்க அப்படின்னா that is not the answer ன்னு சொல்றாங்க. But of course length doesn't matter. Sometimes right option always have a lengthy answer, could have a lengthy answer. But what I'm trying to say is don't go for it just because it's very lengthy. Okay, that's verbosity. If you find something extra, something irrelevant to the context, then that option has to be eliminated. Verbosity options can be eliminated. Second is vagueness. Now they are using the opposite technique. Anything that is short and precise or anything that is fancier with a different vocabulary can definitely be impressive. Human tendency is to get attracted to all the fancier things around us. So these type of fancy statements which looks very crisp but has an incomplete meaning. When the line doesn't serve the meaning, then however fancy it looks, it's not the right option. That is the point that we have to be sure of. Yeah. Anything, it could be very short, it could be very long, but if the meaning is incomplete or if the statement given is not relevant to the context, then those are the options to be eliminated. Let's see the definition of vagueness. They use short sentences and impressive words to give the appearance of being terse and apt at the same time. Okay, it might look abrupt, it might look apt at the same time. However, they end up being vague and incomplete. So, incomplete sentences should be eliminated. The best answer is not just by its length or the quality of words, but by its clarity and completeness. Yeah, got it? So, these are the important things that we should look for. Complete and clear idea should be conveyed either through short sentences or long sentences, it doesn't matter, provided it has some clear clarity and completeness. Yeah. Now let's get on to the last two strategies to eliminate the wrong options. Contradiction. So the contradiction here is again implicit or explicit. The options given will totally contradict the statements given in the passage. So those are called contradictory statements. So let's look into the definition. Easiest to eliminate because they tend to contradict the passage either implicitly or explicitly, right? So we know if the matter is really true or not, and you can easily conclude saying this is a contradictory statement. In that case, you can just eliminate it. You don't have to spend so much time rechecking it. When you know for it, when you know for sure that the statement is contradictory, eliminate it at once. Explicit contradictions can be eliminated by reading the passage thoroughly. Explicit contradictions can be eliminated by reading the passage thoroughly. Yeah, right. Anything that is direct, say for example, dogs have 4 legs, and if the option says dogs have 3 legs, this is contradictory. That is an explicit contradictory. Anything given in the passage is given the statement given in the option. If it contradicts directly to the statement given in the passage, that is explicit contradiction. Eliminate it immediately. Implicit contradictions can be eliminated with a clear understanding of the passage and its implications. Yeah, for this you need to understand the meaning or the message and see if the option is conveying the same meaning, or if it is given in a totally opposite way or opposite meaning, then eliminate it at once. So these are the contradiction possible contradictions in that can be given in the options, and you can eliminate it when you know for sure that the passage has a different meaning. So irrelevance. Besides all these three, irrelevance is something that is very quick to eliminate. Not related but used to fill up the void. They might have given their own assumptions or something that any add-on sentences or anything of their own choice, but never ever seen in the context are irrelevant statements. Please eliminate it at once. Let's look into the definition. Not related but used to fill up the void. Irrelevant statements are framed using impressive words and phrases that give an intellectual feel to them. Again, they make us, they're just trying to attract us to the wrong options. No, don't get attracted. Be very sure of the answer. These traps can be identified easily if you have comprehended the question correctly. That's it, right? One sentence that sums up everything. If you know the meaning of the passage, you will definitely not go for wrong option. That's what he's saying. So you can eliminate verbosity, vagueness, contradiction, and irrelevance in the options, so that you are left with very few options, 1 or 2 options, and of those one or two, you will be choosing the right option by validating the option to that of the passage, and you'll definitely conclude to the right answer. Yeah. So practicing elimination makes a lot of sense, as it will be the differentiating factor between passing with an average score or with flying colors. As I said, it's a competitive exam, and your strategies and your inputs towards reading comprehension or any topic for that matter, the effort you put in will definitely be seen with the time you get, with the clarity you get when you're working on it during exams. So hope you're very clear with all the initial inputs of reading comprehension. And now we are going to see the passages for practice. How we'll be discussing how to approach the questions, how to derive at the answers. Everything will be discussed. And there's another separate module that have all the CSAT questions, and we'll be working that as well. Please get ready with a paper and a pen. We'll work it out together so that we have we are all on the same page. Any doubts or any difficulty you face, please don't hesitate to comment below. We'll be addressing that as well. Thank you. Please don't forget to watch the rest of the two videos because that gives you a complete picture of reading comprehension. Thank you so much. Hi, let's look into the passages of reading comprehension for practice. So, passage 1. In India, government healthcare is a negligible segment, even if it's meant to service mammoth numbers. The rest of the pharma and healthcare industry, drug price controls notwithstanding, runs on free market principles. At the top of the heap are doctors and corporates that control the system and dictate the cost, quality, and direction of healthcare. These days, insurance companies are muscling into this fiercely guarded territory, leading to an inevitable power struggle. Which makes me wonder what exactly is the best approach at the policy level to something like healthcare. Unbridled free market, totalitarian state control, or something in between. It all depends on who ends up as top dog. Unfortunately, whether it's Europe, US, or India, this is one sector in which the consumer is definitely not keen. Whether you can pay or not, patients are at the mercy of either the government, insurance companies, or the healthcare industry. The game is about power and money. Okay, the questions are: the healthcare industry in India is controlled entirely by doctors and corporates, run completely according to free market principles, run partly by the government and majorly by private players. D. Inadequate according to the needs of the population. So here, the word entirely, completely itself makes those two, um, you know, uh, wrong options because government healthcare is a negligible segment. Okay. In India, government healthcare is a negligible segment, which means it takes care of, but it has become a negligible part. So government is still interfered in healthcare industry. Whereas here, it's controlled entirely by doctors or run completely according to free market principles. Options prove that the statements are wrong. So let's eliminate A and B based on the said inference. Option C, run partly by the government and majorly by private players. Here, the private players again refer to doctors and corporates. So, option C should be the right answer. Let's still get into the option D. Inadequate according to the needs of the population. Again, this is quite irrelevant. So, we are eliminating option D. Second question, why are doctors and corporates able to dominate healthcare in India? So understand the question, why are doctors and corporates able to dominate healthcare in India? They're asking the reason for them to dominate. Option A, in India, owing to the large size of the population, healthcare under government control is negligible. Have they anywhere mentioned that because of population, government is actually controlling it in a very negligible way? No. So option A is ruled out immediately. In India, patients have almost unlimited choice if they can afford private doctors and corporate patented drugs. Again, we're not talking about patients here or their choices here. So option B is very much untrue. Option C. In India, pharmaceutical industry in particular, healthcare industry in general, and drug price control are left to the unbridled free market principles. So here we see that the rest of the pharma and healthcare industry, drug price controls notwithstanding, runs on free market principles. Fine. So the statement is true, but then is that the reason for doctors and corporates to dominate? Fixing the drug price, does that make doctors and corporates, dominate the government? No, right? Let's look into the option D, but still we'll put C on hold. In India, healthcare is largely run according to free market principles. I think this sums up the entire reason for doctors and corporates to be dominating in India. I think more than option C, D is relevant here. They are talking about one good reason for them to dominate, but not the entire reason that is discussed in the passage. So option C is again ruled out for the same reason. Question 3. What is common about the healthcare sector of Europe, US, and India? We know that there was a discussion, right? Unfortunately, whether it's Europe, US, or India, this is one sector in which consumers definitely not the king. Whether you can pay or not, patients are at the mercy of either the government. So this statement is there. In the passage, let's see the options. Option A, the healthcare in Europe, US, or India is either totalitarian or unbridled free market or something in between. This was not the reason, but however, these were the points discussed in the passage. This is not the reason. I'm sorry. This has to be eliminated. Option B, in the healthcare sector in Europe, US, and India, the patient is at the receiving end of the system. I think without any doubt, we'll go for option B because the options say, I mean, the passage says patients are at the mercy of either the government, insurance companies, or the healthcare industry, which means they are at the receiving end. No matter if you're affordable to pay or not, you're still at the receiving end, is what you're trying to say. And that is the common aspect in Europe, US, or India. So I think option B, and when you know that option B is the definite right answer, you can rule out option C and D in order to save time. But then let's look into the options for practice. The healthcare sector in Europe, US, and India are run according to the principles of unbridled free market. Yeah, this is, but on a broader spectrum they've given, and there's no specification about it, or there's no particular reason why the three countries are continents of, you know, the common aspect is not discussed here. Option D, the healthcare sector in Europe, US, and India is marked by a power struggle between insurance companies and doctors and corporates. That is also not the common aspect among three. So we now know that option B is the only right answer for this question. Done with passage 1, passage 2. Steps to regulate drilling, fracking, mining, and their ozone depleting missions are certainly a great thing. But it's time, if not well past the time, that we move wholeheartedly into renewable resources. This year has seen incredible progress in both policy, innovation, and adoption of renewable resources, largely solar and wind power. But there's still a long way to go. The Great Lakes of the US and Canada have the potential to provide power for 210 million homes, and as the US seeks to expedite the approval process for wind farms, we still have to design better turbines to adequately protect wildlife. There's a lot we can still do on an individual level to reduce our energy usage and corresponding responsibility for fossil fuel usage and the generated emissions. Simply switching to LED light bulbs can cut energy usage of lighting a home by a third. It might not sound like much, but as with so many easy, individually adopted earth-saving measures, when replicated across a large area, it starts to make a very significant impact. So let's get on to the questions. With reference to the passage, the following assumptions have been made. 1. Renewable resources are good for the environment. The production of LED lights has increased recently. Our planet is incapable of supporting the civilization of billions of people. So without even going to questions, we know that option 2 is not true because the production of LED lights has increased recently. No, they're just telling simply switching to LED light bulbs can cut energy usage. We are advised to use LED, and they haven't said, or there isn't any fact that says production of LED lights has increased recently. So option 2 is not true. Our planet is incapable of supporting the civilization of billions of people. Again, there is no evidence of supporting the population. So option 3 is also not true. Which of the above mentioned assumptions are valid according to the passage? Okay, now that we don't have any single option, we need to reconsider the options. Renewable resources are good for the environment, definitely yes. It should be 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. So 2 is definitely ruled out because we have found a logical reason to it. Third option, our planet is incapable of supporting the civilization of billions of people. Maybe that's the reason they have adopted so many other measures, alternative measures to survive. So this is not explicit but implicit. So in that way, let's consider third option. And so the right option for the first question should be option C. Yeah. Which of the following statements is in line with that of with what the passage states? Option A, the use of reusable and recyclable coffee cups. Okay, nothing is discussed in the passage. Shopping bags and other such items is increasing? Definitely not. Yeah, because they're not talking anything reusable or recyclable. Option B, although young people are driving less, we aren't going to do we aren't going to be doing away with cars anytime soon. Again, cars have not come in picture. So option B is definitely eliminated. Option C, by converting urban areas into fruitful green spaces, food can be grown directly in the community. Again, this is talking about food, which is also not discussed. So we are left with only one option. Hope that is the right answer. Citizens are increasingly fixing solar panels on their roofs. So we are talking about energy consumption, energy saving, and that's the whole passage. That's about the whole passage. And citizens are increasingly fixing solar panels, and the solar panels in turn gives. I mean, it can be obtained through solar energy. So energy consumption is discussed, and so option D looks good. So the right answer should be option D. Okay, now moving on to the third passage. The principal reason for wanting an increased share of the revenues, of course, has to do with the fact that the states spend a far greater sum of money than the center does on what are called development areas. Apart from the money the states get from the center, by way of their share in the tax collections, they also get grants from the center for various programs like JNNURM and the NREGS and so on. This is the problem area. While the money is supposedly a grant, it isn't quite that. For one, the grant has to be spent on schemes specified by the center schemes which, as LK Advani pointed out the other day, have mostly been named after just three individuals. So, for instance, it may well be the case that a state may not think an NREGA kind of scheme is top priority for it, but since the money is available as a grant and the center is advertising the scheme all over the place as a pro-poor one, most states tend to go in for it. The state's freedom to implement their own schemes is curtailed since they can only get money if it is the central scheme that's being implemented, right down to the last item in the scheme's design. This puts an additional financial burden on the states. Under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, for instance, states were given 85% of the money as a grant initially. So they spent 15% on the teachers hired or the schools built. Okay. I think we are very much aware of what topic is being discussed. We are talking about the money or the budget for state in the center and how difficult it is for the state, the pressure imposed on the state, and the schemes introduced by the center. All those things we covered. Let's look into the questions. Okay, still there is a few more lines. There are a few more lines. The grant has now fallen to 60% and could fall further. So the states now have to shell out more for the teachers they hired for the central scheme. And since each grant is restricted to the plan period, teachers hired by the states in the previous plan period are the responsibility of the states. Okay, the first question. The main reason for wanting an increased share of the revenues is that option A, the center dictates how the state should spend their revenues. As a result, there is a conflict of interest. Again, the first part of the statement looks good, but then the result, the reason they've given or an add-on that is there in the first sentence is conflict of interest, which is not discussed. So this cannot be taken for granted, or we cannot assume things. So option A is definitely not the right answer. Option B, the state's freedom to implement their own schemes needs further finances than states which usually requires some form of grant from the center. I think this is also something made up. Okay, this is not in the passage, or this is not even implied in the passage. Definitely, option B is also eliminated. The states spend a far greater sum of money than the center does on what are called development areas. I think the passage directly says states spend a far greater sum of money than the center does on what are called development areas, and that's the reason states want more money. I think without any doubt, option C is the right answer. Let's look into option D as well. Added responsibility to carry out central schemes forces the states to need more money. Again, responsibility, no, all those things were not discussed. So option D is also the wrong answer. So option C is the right answer because it's very much explicit. It's there on the first line, and that's the reason why states want more money. Why was it difficult for the states to get money to put into practice these schemes? Okay, option A, as each grant is time bound, it was difficult for the states to implement their own schemes, resulting in a lack of money. Okay, option B, the center dictates how the states should spend their revenues. As a result, there is a conflict of interest which leads to a loss of the grant. Again, conflict of interest is not the right answer. And again, first option, as each grant is time bound, it was difficult for the states to implement their own schemes. Time bound is also not discussed, so option A is out of the choice. The states refused to compel to put into practice schemes which they thought they were non-priority, resulting in loss of crimes. Completely out of context. Option B, states could only get money if it was a central scheme that was being implemented right down to the last item in the scheme's design. I think this is also an explicit information. You can see, I'll just show you. The state's freedom to implement their own schemes is curtailed since they can only get money if the central scheme that's being implemented right down to the last item. Yeah, this is very, very much explicit, and so the right option is option D. Okay, so we are done with 3 passages and few more to go. Passage 4. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths in which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But the time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecution with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. Okay, so it's a small passage but has a lot of depth in it. Let's look into the questions. Which of the following have been referred to as horrible demons? Let's get back to the passage. So, sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful earth. They filled the earth with violence, drenched it often with human blood, and destroyed civilizations and the whole nations to despair. Had it not been these four horrible demons. So, demons here are sectarianism. What is sectarianism? Sectarianism has having too much of faith. One is obsessed with his own faith. That is sectarianism, especially of religious beliefs. Bigotry is one. Bigot is one who has fixed opinions about things, and those fixed opinions are mostly based on prejudice. So those that act is called bigotry, or that belief is called bigotry, and it's a horrible decision. Fanaticism is again a very strong, ஒரு வெறியர்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, that is a fanatic. So fanaticism. These 3 are the demons according to, and violence is also a demon according to the passage. So let's see what are the options given. Okay, they are not telling violence as a demon because they filled the earth with violence. These 3 has filled the world with violence. So these 3, had it not been for these horrible demons, okay, human society. So demons are not demons is not referring to violence. Let's see: bigotry, violence, despair, fanaticism, and sectarianism. So it should be option 1, 4, and 5, right? Bigotry, fanaticism, sectarianism. Let's check it out. Yeah, it's 1, 4, and 5. And why not violence? I think we are clear why violence is not in the option. And there's no option. First of all, there is no option that includes violence. If at all it is being included, they've ruled out either 4 or 5. So in that logic, you will again choose option B. Even otherwise, to have a clear understanding, only these 3 contribute to the violence, and violence is not one of the aspects of demons, or it's not, at least not according to the passage. Yeah. Second question. Consider the following assumptions. The advancement of human society is inversely dependent on the violence. So this violence, which is considered to be very evil, has affected the advancement of the society, is what the whole passage is about. So here the statement says is inversely dependent, which means It's true. Yeah. Option one is a fact as per the passage. Two, the sword and the pen are capable of ending all forms of harassment. Let's see the context where sword and pen comes from. The bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecution with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. Here, sword or with the pen doesn't quit or doesn't help in stopping any or any form of harassment. Here they say the sword and the pen are capable of ending all forms of harassment, whereas the passage says it the persecution part is done with sword and the pen, and it doesn't affect the harassment. Okay, it doesn't end the harassment at least. So option two is not so valid. So option A, one only is the right answer. You know why option one is right? You should have known why option two is wrong, and then go for option A, one only. Yeah. What is meant by death knell of all fanaticism? Again, death knell of all fanaticism here is a symbolic representation of, ending fanaticism. That's the metaphor. This is kind of a metaphor used to express the urge to end fanaticism. Let's see the options. Which one suits best? A bell rung to announce the end of extremism? No. A bell rung to indicate the end of all deaths and miseries? Definitely no. The tolling of the bell to announce execution of all fanatics? No. I think it is the symbol to end fanaticism. That's all. I think all these are made up based on, you will definitely go for option C just by seeing fanatics. And such things should be avoided. Have a clear picture in your mind before going for any option. So option D, none of the above, should be the right answer because all three are simply made up. Passage 5. This year, Americans will elect a new president on November 4th. It's an important event that happens once every 4 years. Currently, the president is always elected from one of the two main parties in the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats. There are other presidential candidates. However, it is unlikely that any of these third party candidates will win. It certainly hasn't happened in the last 100 years. In order to become the presidential nominee of a party, the candidate must win the primary election. Primary elections are held throughout each state in the United States in the first half of any election year. Then the delegates attend a party convention in order to nominate the chosen candidate. Usually, as in this election, it's clear who will be the nominee. However, in the past, parties have been divided and choosing a nominee has been a difficult process. Okay. Question 1. The election of the new president is described as. Now, in order to conclude or arrive at the right option, you must be aware of the meanings of four options. A presumptuous event. Here, presumptuous means probability. A probable event. A probable event. No, that's not a probable event. They say it's an important event. So let's see. So let's see which word conveys the same meaning like important. Trivial means very little or less. Significant event is an important event. So it is option C. Option D, an insipid event. So insipid is nothing but less interested. Okay. Any event that occurs with no interest or less interest is an insipid event. Insipid means less interest. So it's not a presumptuous event for sure. It's not a trivial event and it's not an insipid event. So probably the right option is a significant event, which means important event. Significant means important. Yeah. Second question. The president is always elected from option A, one of the two predominant parties in the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats. One of the two contesting parties in the United States, the Republicans, okay. Now they're checking with the adjectives, predominant parties or contesting parties or minor parties or subordinate parties. because the second half of the sentence are the same in all the four options. Let's look into the passage. Here they say president is always elected from one of the two main parties. So again, they are taking the synonym of main with that of the four different words put up in the options. Predominant means main. We know that. So option A should be the right answer. Contesting parties, minor and subordinate parties, no, definitely not. They are talking about the main parties, and these two are opposite. So definitely not C and D. Option B, contesting parties, they're not talking about the competitors or any two rivalry parties, but the main parties. So option B is also eliminated. So option A, predominant parties is the right option. Okay. What have the parties been in the past with regard to choosing a nominee? The last statement says in the past parties have been divided. So let's see the synonym of divided. Unanimous is together. Okay, unanimous means together, disunited. So it's definitely option B. They were disunited. Indifferent is having differences of opinions. Apathetic is again no interest. Apathetic means no interest. So the option B, disunited, is the right answer. Fourth question, what are the chances of third-party candidates winning? They say third-party candidates will win. It certainly hasn't happened in the last 100 years, which means it is not even in future. And if they say the third party is winning, it should be improbable. It's not imaginable because we know for as a matter of fact that it hasn't happened in the past. It's not impressive. It's not certain. So you can rule out B and D. Imaginable or improbable. Improbable is they are given a probability that in the past 100 years it hasn't happened. So it is improbable and not imaginable. You need to be a bit smart here and just go with the most suitable answer. Let's not take things for granted. Fifth question. With reference to the passage, consider the following statements. Third-party candidates usually do not win because they do not get sufficient votes. Third-party candidates usually do not win because they lack sufficient funds for a nationwide campaign. They haven't told the reason, have they? They just told third party is not able to win. It hasn't happened in the last 100 years to become the president. That's it. They haven't discussed the reason. Whereas here, third party candidates usually do not win. Up until this, both the statements are right. The reasons are add-ons. So it's definitely option D, neither one or two. Yeah. Quite tricky because we tend to choose the best among the two, but there isn't a reason in the passage. So be very sure and choose option D. It's neither one nor two. Yeah. Passage 6. I think this is the last passage for practice. However, religion doesn't always have a positive effect on mental health. Its impact depends on a person's beliefs and whether religion is generally accepted by the larger community, experts said. For example, if instead of advocating love and compassion, religion advocates hate of non-believers, these negative beliefs would also become part of the way the brain works. In theory, this would turn on areas of the brain involved in thinking about hate and could increase stress and stimulate the release of stress hormones. In addition, if some people believe that a health condition such as addiction is a punishment from God, they may be less likely to seek treatment. It has also been found that when people believe that God has abandoned them or when they question God's love for them, they tend to experience greater emotional distress and even face an increased risk of an earlier death. Oh God. So let's look into the questions. With reference to the passage, the following assumptions have been made. Option 1, some people are God-fearing. New information along with the held beliefs make certain neural connections in the brain. Option 3, religion affects mental health. Here, some people are God-fearing. Yeah. We know that out of fear, people are getting affected. So the first point is definitely right. Some people are God-fearing because they're asking for assumptions. It could be inference. Though that's not directly stated in the passage, we can infer from the passage. New information along with held beliefs make certain neural connections. Neural connections is what is discussed in the passage. They say it affects them. Greater emotional distress and even face an increased risk of an early death. Is again, they have neural connections. Religion affects mental health. Yeah, I think this third statement is also validated. Hmm. So I don't think any option is out of context or something opposite to the given passage. So the right option should be 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. Okay. What is the crux of the passage? Religion can be viewed as a double-edged sword. Option B, religious beliefs may lead to harmful outcomes. Option C, the dark side to spirituality. Option D, people struggle with religion. Here, they have discussed doesn't always have a positive effect on mental health. Religion doesn't always have a positive effect, which means it has both positive and negative. Right? Doesn't always have a positive effect means at times it has positive effect, at times it has negative effect. Whereas the options here, beliefs may lead to harmful outcomes, is only negative. The dark side to spirituality. This spirituality is totally a new concept. Yeah, people struggle with religion is also only negative. Whereas option A, double-edged sword, talks about both positives and negatives. So option A is the right answer. Now you understand how we ruled out the unnecessary or the wrong options and how we arrived at the right decision. This is how you should do. Eliminate these three because of the said reasons, and option A is the right answer. Okay. So with this, we are completing our practice sessions for reading comprehension. In the next video, we'll be doing all the CSAT comprehension questions. Let's look at that in detail. I've taken samples from different years. Let's just work it out and see how CSAT papers or CSAT questions actually are. In this video, if you have any doubts or any difficulty in following me up with the questions, please definitely comment. We'll discuss that in detail. Thank you.